In this episode, I want to talk a little bit about how to get these windows reflective in a scene. And of course, we could go to Photoshop and paint each window to get a reflection mask. That would be one way. But the truth is that it is maybe a little bit more difficult when we have a perspective image of that. And I want to go here just to Photoshop and I show you normally the way how it is done. And I use this method mostly to get rid of those poles here, not for the windows. And I get then something like this. Maybe I'll make this a little bit bigger so you can see what I'm doing here. So the standard is, of course, that you go here into filter, into the vanishing point filter. And I have prepared this here, of course. You drag over the rectangle here, which is perspective distorted, of course, just in grid. And then you use here this tool, the stamp tool. And then you can paint over everything, and it follows pretty much the way it should be. And when we go here maybe to this side, something like this here, these balconies, if you have no geometry underneath, it will look always a little bit wrong. And so my advice is you create a little cube here always behind and the plane there, and you need to take it out of the picture because you can look through it. So it needs one time with, one time without. And to do this, we go here into the stamp tool, click here with the option Alt key down, and then we have here a little preview. You can see that very easy. And we have to find exactly the place where it is here. Go down and start painting. And I do this here not very precisely, but you see already it's pretty brutal here. It goes really to work. And in this way, we can go here, of course, also to windows and paint windows. Paint one window in a mask and then go with the perspective tool. But as you can see, there is a change in it. So that's not that simple. And I encourage you always, again, whatever is flat on a cube should be flat and has nothing like this here from the traffic light into it. So I click here OK. You could also render this out with this method as a texture. We have discussed this earlier. My idea is a different one. And of course I use the tools in Cinema 4D. And the simple answer is when you have followed the projection man, the long one where I go really into details again and again, then you know already what I have in mind. We want to have a view that is pretty much orthogonal. That is nothing really for projection. We have to go with a camera or just with any camera off. That means the editor camera here. And then we go out of that. And I show you that, of course, in a greater view. I hold the option Alt key down, and then I can go here just to this view. And I try to stay here so I can get for my windows, and I ignore the first floor here completely, that we have these lines here parallel to the mask here. So, and when this is roughly done, it should be maybe a little bit more precise than I have done it, but this will help here tremendously, of course. And we go then with the cube selected to Windows and call up the projection man. This is all we have to do. And keep in mind that we don't use here the coverage render, not one of these, because then we get only the rendering. We want to have a complete camera with everything. Coverage render, and then we get here the render projection, and this might be helpful without the edges at the moment, and constant shading might be nice. Save with alpha, yeah, we can use this, of course. So, but the main idea here is that we have a good naming convention. That means cube and reflection. And normally I have a number behind, but this is okay. We don't need 16-bit, it's maybe nicer. 8-bit would here really enough because we want to identify only the areas where we want to have reflections. 16 is nice. If I want to have very tiny variations in it, I go here just with 8-bit to make it simple, and it would be even okay to work in grayscale. That's an option here. So I click OK, and you see here I have fixed my little edge before. I go step by step here, and then I get in Photoshop this image here. Command or Control R in Photoshop, I hope that is in Windows the same, gives me here an option to pull out my guides. And that is for me important because then I can see how precise I have set up the camera in the first place. And by the way, this is really not the best example to show you that here, of course, but I want to show you that on a picture, maybe something like this here. When we have a facade like this where the windows are pretty much always the same, then we could go with the same technique, make it in rectangle, and then we go in Photoshop, create a little black and white image and save that as a brush, and then we only have to touch the windows, and we get always exactly that area. I have done this for the music video 100 times, and that worked very nice. In this case, the window, the glass area, changes here dramatically, so we have to do it in a different way. And we can hand paint this, or if we have luck, we can go even here with selection. And of course, that will not work for the most right-sided one, and I haven't cleaned up this. And normally we could go then with the Option Alt key down and go here just down, if that is precisely done, and go here down, and so on. You might remember that from the speed modeling, how I have created those facades with the selection. And when you do this the whole time, you get exactly only the glass area. And then we get a black and white image from that. And by the way, this should be black and white. It is in color here, so there's maybe a little issue inside of the setup. Anyway, I will do this here, and I will be back with a reflection map. So, and I have set up 3 planes here with the reflection, and as texture for the reflection I've used just the stuff that I had in Photoshop because it works mostly in terms of color and so on. Of course, based on the light direction, you have maybe to think about if that facade on the other side is darker or brighter at least. So there's always a little bit game of trial and error. What I found here more than often, and it's not really visible in the still, but in the moment I show you an animation with that, you will say that's too flat. It looks like one big glass pane as one glass behind. So I go ahead a little bit of myself and go here to the bump channel and use here just noise. And 2% might be already too much, but to make the point, you get the idea. It's all distorted now here. And with this noise, maybe 0.3 is already too much. And that needs to be tested in renderings, of course. And you can distort this even more. So each window has a different one. That's up to you how far you want to go with that. So how do I have set this up? Pretty simple. These are the panes here where I have my reflections on. And of course, I don't want to see these in transparency. That means when I have here an alpha channel, I would see maybe something from that. I don't want to see them in refraction because maybe I have set up here something that has refraction in it. Only seen by reflection. That's my main thing. Seen by camera? No. Big no. Seen by rays? Of course, otherwise I wouldn't have a result. Cast shadow, receive shadow, and so on. No, no, no. And so I can go even and tick them away for the editor view because I don't need that stuff here. Back to my animation, and I will do a little preview so you can see how it looks like. So as I said, it's a little bit maybe too clean, and even the little bump is not exactly where we can go. And we have to fix, of course, some of these issues in the next episode, where I want to talk all about the channels. But when you take a look here to this side, there is no life in the window, nothing. And this here is, of course, overdone. It's 100% reflection, and the noise is just slapped on to it. But I think it gives already a nice impression about this. And when you think I have used here only 2 photos with a little bit Photoshop work, that's not that shabby, right? And there's, of course, more possible. Think about set extensions. Think about that this building here is not a building. It's maybe an object that you want to place inside of a collage, of a mud painting or whatever. And it has just the wrong perspective. So you project this to an appropriate geometry, and then you rotate this as I rotate here this building for the animation. So you can reuse a lot of your library stuff, even if the perspective is not okay and all of that. Just project it on geometry and make a rendering and paste it into your mud painting. Or leave it just in 3D, of course. It's even better. So, okay, see you in the next part where we talk about how to use channels in camera projection, because that's a mighty theme. See you in the next part.